Senator Morrell, now I ask that we pick up House Bill 265, which we passed over earlier. It's an act to amend Title 18, registration and voting.
Good. Bad. Yeah.
Picking up 265, Representative Smith.
All right, Senator Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this bill is very straightforward. It simply allows that after a 5-year cooling off period, individuals who have been incarcerated, who have served their time, who have done their debt to society, that after a 5-year period, after they get out, they are then eligible to be able to vote. That's what the bill does.
I have amendments by Senator Reiser. Set number 4344 by Senator Reiser.
Senator Reiser.
How friendly it is.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 4344 says that anyone is convicted of a felony offense of election fraud should not be included in this statute.
Any questions on the amendment? Senator Morrell, you got any objection? Any objection to adoption of the amendment? Stands adopted. All right, Senator Morrell, you answer questions. Senator Claitor.
From Senator Claitor, do I have to?
Oh, you want the floor? I'm sorry. Senator
Okay.
Claitor, you got the floor. Come on down.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to give a little bit more background on this bill. The class of folks that we're talking about are those that are under an order of imprisonment or confinement. And I wanted to give us a little background on what other states are doing and the state of the law right now. There are 2 states, Maine and Vermont, don't give any restrictions on the right to vote. So if you're in prison in Maine or Vermont, you can vote. 14 states require that if you're in prison, they take away your right to vote. And those 14 states are Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Utah. So there doesn't seem to be any geography that unites these folks on the restriction as it relates to prison only. Prison and parole, not probation. So remember, probation is what you get if you never are going to prison. Parole is what you potentially are awarded through the parole board. For prison and parole, California puts a restriction on it, Colorado puts a restriction on it, Kentucky puts a restriction on it, New York puts a restriction on it. Prison, parole, and probation, 18 states put a restriction on it, and then prison, parole, probation, and post-sentence, 12 states put a restriction on it. So what we're talking about here is we fall within the prison and parole group, prison, parole, and probation group. There's been some litigation about this, and in our Constitution, if you're under a sentence of imprisonment, there's a question about just what is that, and it's been to the First Circuit, and folks have decided, in the language of Judge Higginbotham, she points out in her opinion that this is not for the courts to decide, this is for the legislature to decide on whether this is something that we want to do. So just framing the issue on that, this is an issue that's within our purview to decide. There has been some litigation on it, but the First Circuit, at least through both its initial hearing and rehearing, has said, leave it to the legislature. That's what they do. So I have constituents that come to visit with me all the time, and one of the things that I do before they show up, if they have a real question, is I run their voting record. And I see how often they vote, whether or not they've even registered to vote. And I'd say 25% of the folks that come to my office aren't even registered to vote, yet they take the time to tell me that they're for an issue or against an issue. And when we disagree, I always slide a voter registration card across the table and say, you need to register to vote and vote against me next time. Or if you like what I said, you can register to vote and vote for me next time. And you know that I'm not making that up. That sounds like something I would do. So as far as what's going on here through this process of this discussion, these guys in the blue shirts have been here through the reinvestment process, and one of the guys that I've met through the process is Chico over there. And Chico can't vote. Chico is on parole, would like to vote, and he's been very active coming here and participating in the different things that we do. I haven't met a group that is that engaged with the idea that I want to vote, frankly. What the bill itself does is it says, hey, as it relates to Chico, if the parole board has decided to give you parole and you've been out for 5 years, you've had this cleansing period or earning the right to vote period, and you've stayed out of trouble after 5 years, you could vote. It also applies to probationers, but in this last go-round, we've shortened up probation to 3 years plus 2 years. So we're really not having a real impact as it relates to probation on this, but some folks will be extended on probation and some folks are out there. So a lot of what we do here is about earning redemption, I guess, is what we're talking about here, where Chico had given me some paperwork and says, oh, you know, one of the members of the Saints or a couple of Saints are for this. I said, I don't care what the Saints are for or not for. I don't know any of those guys. Drew Brees is a great football player, but I don't see him down here engaged in this kind of issue. I'm interested in a person that's like Chico. And he did a bad thing a long time ago, and he paid his debt to society, sat in jail, tried to improve himself. And the question for us, for me, for you, is 5 years long enough to earn the right to vote after the parole board has said that you can go out there? I think it's a reasonable thing to do. I've struggled with it, tried to figure out where we fit in the grand scheme of things, and I've told you how it works out with these other states. 16, 18 of them don't impose it the same way that we do. 18 do just like we do, but they make a decision on how far out. So I'm going to vote for the bill. It was kind of difficult at first saying, hey, what am I doing here? But we are always encouraging youngsters to register to vote. We're encouraging other people, register to vote. And here folks are working very hard to get their vote back. I've talked to the people at the Department of Corrections, and it seems like we're talking about somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people spread throughout the state that would like to participate. I see the question light. I don't know if it's for me or not, but...
Dr. Thompson, you want to ask Senator Claitor a question?
Senator Claitor, I really enjoyed that information. I need you to do a lot of research. I've got a couple other things I want you to research tomorrow, but this is an important issue, and you correctly stated, in my opinion, that this gives an opportunity for people that have already paid their debt. And this, if it's 3,000 or 4, if that makes them better citizens and engage more, that's something we should do, don't you think?
Yeah, and I don't take it lightly. I think it is something we should do, but we're big on saying pay your debt, spend your time, and that you can earn your way back into society. Some people would say 5 years is too long, but it's a happy place, I guess, that we're that is the sweet spot on the tennis racket, I guess. I don't know a real answer on that.
Right. I think that it's a starting point. But this would be a good study to see how we do in Louisiana. But I have found, visiting with people about this issue, most people don't understand that, like you and I do, that right now they cannot vote, but they have not very much knowledge about that. Did you know?
I didn't have much knowledge about it either until I started working on it to gain a better understanding of it. But it's not like it's going to be a sea of folks that are going to sway elections all over the state. It's people that say, I would like to be involved in the process. I'd like to pick my candidates, and I'd like to vote for them. I had an odd experience myself when I ran for Congress. There was a candidate in the race against me that couldn't even vote for himself.
Did he win that race?
He didn't, nor did I. Any other questions
Senator Martini,
for me?
you had a question of Senator Claitor?
Pass them over, quick.
Senator Martini? He waves. All right. All right. Any further questions and further discussion? Senator Morrell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'll be very brief. I think oftentimes we talk about our criminal justice process being rehabilitative. When it comes to individuals who serve their time with this 5-year cooling off period, the right to vote is something that everyone should aspire to. We spend a lot of time trying to convince young people to register to vote. As Senator Claitor said, these are people who actively want to vote. They understand how important that activity is, and they are desperate to have it. And part of this process is when someone goes to jail, they've served their time. The recidivism rate in Louisiana for criminal offenses is very high. So these are people who are the success stories who left prison and didn't go back. I think it's reasonable, I think it's appropriate that after 5 years of leaving prison, keeping themselves clean, getting reintegrated back into society, becoming citizens of our great state, that they should have the right to vote. Thank you very much. I move final passage.
All right. Senator Morrell has moved final passage. When the machines are open, those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed, no. Secretary, open machines, please. Vote your machines, please. Senator Milkovich, yes. Senator Tarver, yes. Are you through voting? Senator Morrell, yes. You through voting? All right, close them up, please. 24 yeas, 13 nays. Bill final passage. Reconsider vote. Let them object.